This is Greg Kelly. Donate now to Toys for Tots, which works year-round. Go to toysfortots.org. Toys for Tots supports children in need throughout the year with programs like the Toys for Tots Literacy Program. Established in 2008, it has provided over 63 million books to disadvantaged children. The Toys for Tots Literacy Program is committed to providing disadvantaged children with direct access to books and educational resources that enhance their ability to read and communicate effectively. Go to toysfortots.org.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi!
Okay, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Sunday morning. With us today is General Petraeus, and he was a four-star general. He was a CIA director. Nobody better than General Petraeus to give the American people on a Sunday morning, where the heck are we? Well, General, I mean, a lot of confusion going around. I've had several interviews the last few days, and a lot of false information going around in many, many different directions. So I guess the American people are waiting on you to find out what really is going on. Thank you, General Petraeus, for being available.
Well, it's always good to be with you, John. Thanks. Look, I think the military campaign, the operational campaign against Iran is going very impressively. We obviously took out key regime leaders in the very early minutes, actually, of the campaign, have been taking down the air and ballistic missile defense. We have air superiority, maybe even air supremacy over at least the western part of the country, and we're working our way into the interior. We're going after the missile launchers, the missiles themselves, and the manufacturing facilities for those. That was really one of the reasons that a lot of us expected that Israel was going to strike regardless within a month or so. Anyway, I was in Tel Aviv about 4 weeks ago and got that impression then. They're very worried about the reconstitution of the Iranian missile program. Then going after the drones and the launch sites for those, and also over time the manufacturing facilities there as well. They've been problematic. You've seen, of course, that the Iranians, I think unwisely, expanded their targets, horizontal escalation, if you will, beyond just American bases and facilities and Israeli targets to going after the Gulf states. They even put one up into Turkey, one in Azerbaijan, and Hezbollah, Iran's proxy in southern Lebanon, put a drone towards the British airfield in Cyprus. And so doing, they've had to bring these countries more into the war. I think they hoped that the countries would say, Americans, you got to stop. This is bad for business. And that moment may come at some time, but that is certainly not the case right now. They've already been integrated into the air and ballistic missile defenses. We're all in that together. And I think you may see some of them even contemplate joining the offensive actions in some fashion. So again, the missiles and drones have been absolutely foremost among the target set because they're the big retaliatory means. You've seen the missile launches come way, way down. The drone strikes are still down a bit, but not that much. So there's going to have to be work done there. They don't obviously have anywhere near the warhead that the missiles do. The missiles have to be taken out, but they still can be very problematic. And you've seen the Iranians go after civilian infrastructure. They hit the Fairmont Hotel. They hit an oil loading location, a natural gas one, LNG actually, the French base in the region, and a number of other actually civilian infrastructure targets. So this has been expanded well beyond what I think was the expectation. We've also taken out over 30 of their naval vessels. That's very significant because they're the ones that can interdict freedom of navigation. Some could mine the Strait of Hormuz. There have been a number of attacks on ships in the Gulf and around the Strait, somewhere around a dozen or so, and that has obviously resulted in cessation of most of the exports that go through the Gulf and the Strait, keeping in mind that that's 20% of the world's crude oil and about 20% of the world's LNG as well. So this is very significant. Asia will feel the impact of this most prominently. They really depend on this. A lot of it does go to the east. but Europe will feel it as well to a degree, and also in some special categories like aviation fuel. They depend on some of the distillates and others that come out of the Gulf. So you've seen, as a result, the price of Brent crude, which has stair-stepped its way up. It was down in the low to mid-60s prior to all of this happening. In anticipation of it, it actually went up into the low 70s. A couple of days into the war, it was in the high 70s. One day it went above 80, then came back. Then it was above 80, and now it's roughly up around the $90 per barrel mark. And I'll check it very quickly because I always have this open. It's actually a bit over $90 now. It's about $92.69 per barrel. And interestingly, West Texas Intermediate has followed it up. There's always been this correspondence, but there's no explanation for that in market terms because unless you think that it can substitute for Brent crude as an export. But really, the U.S. is not affected by this other than the price going up. We'll continue to produce 14 million barrels per day or nearly that. We're the largest crude oil producer in the world. We'll continue to produce the largest amount of LNG exported as well. But so this does have a corresponding effect on our economy also, and without question, it's going to pull prices up in a variety of different ways, not just at the gas station. We should note here that we are not actually self-sufficient. We are a net exporter of crude, but we have to import a certain amount of heavy crude as we export light crude because our refineries are configured for that. But we get that from countries that are not in the Gulf. We get it from Canada, Mexico, and now Venezuela again. We're also continuing to go after regime leaders, regime forces, their headquarters, their infrastructure, their bases, their logistical depots, and so forth. We're gradually working our way to ensure that any remnants of the nuclear infrastructure that are left over from the 12-day war are taken care of. There's a report, for example, from the International Atomic Energy Agency that there is a stockpile of 60% enriched uranium. That's one level below weapons grade underneath the rubble at the Esfahan nuclear facility. I'm sure we're going to burrow through that with the massive ordnance penetrator, our 30,000-pound precision munition, and take that out. And here, let me just note that we're able to increase dramatically the number of targets that we hit on a daily basis because we have been successful in creating this air superiority in the areas where we're flying our non-stealthy aircraft. So until you have done that, until you've achieved that, you really don't want to fly through that airspace with non-stealthy aircraft. I'm talking about the B-1 bombers, the B-52s, even some others that you can employ. Otherwise, you're limited to the F-35 stealth fighter bomber and the B-2 stealth bomber that flew all the way from the United States early on and dropped a huge amount of ordnance as well. So all of this is moving along. And as part of this, President Trump has been quite clear, I think, except for maybe the first speech that he made where he talked about regime change being a goal of this operation. I think he's clarified that correctly to recognize that we actually can't achieve regime change, certainly not just through the air, and it would be questionable, but the ground operation would be enormous. So he has essentially said that it's really up to the Iranian people, Iranian break-off elements from the regime, whatever it might be, that could topple the regime, with us creating conditions to make internal political change possible. And that recognizes, I think, that it is possible that when it's all said and done, and I think he'll determine when it's all said and done, and he'll declare victory at the point that we have taken care of all these different targets sufficiently, you still could have the regime in charge. You could end up with a hardline successor. The Assembly of Experts was trying to meet the other day to select the successor to Ayatollah Khamenei, and they got bombed. So they're having to look for an alternate place, I guess. It's a bit more secure and deeper underground. But they are generally hardline clerics and presumably would pick someone who's like them to head the regime. That's one possibility. You could have a somewhat more pragmatic figure, or even a group, a collective leadership arrangement where there might be a bit more pragmatism. And that's going to be very important Because if you have this, again, a very hardline ideological cleric leading, for whom success is nothing more than the regime has survived, no matter how much rubble and destruction is around him as he shakes his fist at the world, then you could have the prospect of challenges in the Gulf region for some time if we have to keep going back and bombing them periodically to deal with whatever threat is emerging, missile, drones, nuclear. Then you start to challenge the business model for the Gulf states, of course, which are havens. They're peaceful. They have good governance, rule of law, very high standard of living, and all the rest of that. So that's how this is moving along. There is talk of some internal opposition. The Iranian Kurds have been featured in this. Keep in mind that there are numerous other minorities. There are Azeris from Azerbaijan. There's, again, the Kurds. There's the Baluch from western Pakistan. There are Sunnis. So there are a number of these different groups, any one of which or all could rise up in some fashion. And the truth is you could end up with a civil war as well, although I think that it is more likely that the regime will survive, and the question will be the character of the new supreme leader and whether that individual is willing to work with the United States to give up its foolish quest for a nuclear weapon, which has brought them so much damage and destruction, and be a reasonable neighbor, a responsible stakeholder, as the saying goes, or wants to continue this very hardline approach, which has brought Iran, again, to extraordinary loss, damage, destruction, and the people experiencing poverty at home and isolation abroad.
General, is our enemies, whether it's Russia or China, I mean, it looks like President Trump has allowed the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, all armed forces to pull out all stops on this one. Well, are our enemies surprised at our abilities?
Well, I think the world is very impressed by what it is that we are doing. Keep in mind, of course, we're not using all our capabilities. You haven't seen the 82nd Airborne Division jump into Tehran or anything like that, and I would not expect to see that, frankly. I think that President Trump has articulated many times what he sees as the lessons of Iraq and to a degree of Afghanistan. But no, I think that, when you read I think very good press, The Economist and others, there's a degree of marvel at the extraordinary capabilities of U.S. and also, I should note, Israeli defense forces. What they've done is very, very impressive. Now, there are some issues here that should be identified, and one of those is what's called the missile math. There is concern. In fact, the reason the president had all the military-industrial complex leaders together yesterday was to exhort them to dramatically increase production of critical munitions and weapon systems, especially Patriot, THAAD, and SM-3 missile interceptors. This is the ground system, the terminal high-altitude area defense system, and then the system that is on ships, which is similar to a Patriot. If you look at the numbers that are officially out there, we produced about 620 Patriot missile interceptors last year. Those are all around the world. And you look at the number of missiles that have been sent toward the west side of the Gulf, and at some point, I'm not sure that you can continue to shoot two to take down one, which is the normal protocol. So the missile math is starting to get, again, a bit worrisome. I think that was one of the factors that led to the end of the 12-day war on the 12th day. I've talked to people in Tel Aviv who said, yeah, we were looking at how many interceptors do we have left and how many missiles and launchers do they have left, and it was getting a bit uncomfortable. So we have to keep an eye on that, just recognizing how many were produced. I think the goal is for this fiscal year to have 2,000 Patriots and again, hundreds of these others. But of course, we've shared some of these with Ukraine, rightly. They are facing this. But Ukraine also has learned how to deal with drones, and we need to learn how to do that as well. In fact, I co-authored an article that was in foreignpolicy.com 2 days ago. You might put a link to it on the website. that talks about the drone attrition trap, where above all, you don't want to be in a position where you have to use a missile interceptor, which costs $2 million or more, to take out a drone that costs $20,000 or $30,000. And these are the Iranian Shahed drones, which, of course, they provided to Russia early on in the war. Then Russia got the means to manufacture them and did product improvements. They put a jet engine on it, larger warhead, can fly higher, faster, and so forth. And the Ukrainians have learned how to shoot them down with their own drones. In fact, I went out on a counter-drone intercept mission about 4 or 5 weeks ago when I was in Ukraine on a frigid night, and the skill of these guys is extraordinary. The lead pilot in that particular crew had taken down over 100 Russian drones. We're going to have to learn very rapidly how to do this ourselves, and also how to help our allies and partners in the region learn that too.
It's a new type of war. I understand that.
It is.
General,
it really is. Yeah. And in Ukraine, which is the future of war, as we've discussed before, it's unmanned systems against unmanned systems. Right now, they're remotely piloted, but not too far in the distant future, there will be autonomous aerial drones at the very least. And then you can have swarms of drones because you're not limited by the number of pilots that you have. So we have to anticipate that rather than react to that.
General, thank you for giving us the most complete briefing of the year on a Sunday morning, and let's catch up again real soon.
Always a pleasure, John. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you.
Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our country has to offer, especially health care. Across every state, every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.